Hi there. Hopefully you've downloaded the zip file that contains a Photoshop document with a number of layers that I've created for you. Today we're going to be creating a composite that looks like this. I've included a template layer that will give you a guide as to where you should be placing your objects, etc. You might be able to see all of your guides when you open up this Photoshop document, depending on if you have guides visible or hidden. If you want to hide your guides, just hit Command semicolon and they'll be hidden. If you want to see them again, Command semicolon will also reveal them. I like to use guides sometimes if I'm trying to align things with one another, or just to help me understand where the scale is on a page that I'm working on. So I might reference these again as we're developing this image. But in the meantime, I'm going to hide this template layer because we're not really going to be using it to build anything. I just want you to be able to understand sort of what the layout of this composition is going to be. Okay, so I'm going to hide the template layer. I do have a black background layer already built for you. And we're going to start by revealing the sky layer. The sky layer is going to be cut out in a circle. It's going to include clouds. It's also going to include a little bit of the earth that we're seeing there. But the earth area is going to be basically hidden by the shape of the hand that we'll be adding in a minute. So I'll select my sky layer, again make sure that it's revealed, and then I'm going to navigate over to my toolbar and select my Elliptical Marquee tool. Remember that M is your shortcut key for Marquee tools, and Shift M will navigate or toggle between the Marquee tools that are currently available. Sorry about that, I turned my phone off. So to make a circular selection, we're going to hold down Shift, click and drag, and select a nice size circle. Okay. If you're not happy with the circle, you can move your selection. It's a little tricky. You want to just make sure that you get that white arrow as you hover over the edge, and then you can click and drag to move your selection around. Once you're happy with the selection, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be feathering the selection so it has a softer edge. Okay, and then we'll be loading the selection into our mask. So if we want to take a look at what the selection looks like, we can navigate to our control bar at the top of our workspace, click on the Select and Mask button, and here I can choose to soften the edge using the feather. Okay, so feather goes outside and inside of your selected area or margins. If you want to shift your edge in or out a little bit, the Shift Edge slider at the bottom of this bar will move the edge of your circle inside or outside. So I'll just shift my edge in just a little bit because it was catching the top of my image and giving me like a flat crop. And then I can make some adjustments to my feathers. Okay, just a little bit more adjusting. So it just depends on what size you made your circle. Once I'm happy with how this is looking, I'll click on my OK button in the lower right corner of my Properties window, and I'll be back to my normal canvas area. Again, double checking that your sky layer is selected. I'll navigate down to the bottom of my Layers panel and click the Add Layer Mask icon. This will load the layer mask from our selection that we just created. V will give us our Move tool, and if we want to move this around the page, we can. So I'll just move this around. If I want to make sure it's sort of within the range of where I had my other objects, I can Command semicolon, or I could even look at my template if I wanted to, but I think we're pretty close. Alright, so we have our sky cut out. That's the first step. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add some hands that are going to look like they're holding that sky. And it might be that the hands are scaled slightly different, so once we cut the hands out, we'll do some minor transformation adjustments just for scale. Okay, so let's reveal the hands layer. Select it, because we're going to be making edits to it. And at this point, we're going to be using the pen tool to cut out the hands. So P is your shortcut for your pen. Make sure that you double check your control panel at the top of your workspace here. I'm going to be working with paths, and I'm going to make sure that for path operations I'm using exclude overlapping shapes. That'll allow me to create a cutout where the thumb and the forefinger meet. Okay, with the pen selected and my hands layer selected, I'm just going to start on the lower part of the hand where the wrist sort of falls off the page on the right side. I'll just click to start my path, hold my mouse down and drag down into the left. Remember, we use as few anchor points as possible. Navigate to the knuckle, click and drag almost flat to the left. Navigate up to where the pinky and the hand meet. I'll set down an anchor point there, and I'm dragging a little bit to the left. And then I'll add one anchor where the nail is for that pinky. Again, dragging to the left. Navigate to the curve of the pinky. I'm not even going to click and drag for the point where the pinky and the finger meet. And then I'll navigate up to where the nail is. Just really tiny. I'm making really tiny arms here. So I'm holding my mouse down and dragging very short Bezier handlebars. And then in some of these where I have just a point, I'm not even making the Bezier handlebars. I'm just setting down a point where the fingers meet. So at the tip of each finger where there's a curve, hold your mouse down and drag out with really short handlebars. And then you don't necessarily have to make a V shape. If you do want to make a V shape where fingers meet, drag inwards towards the hand, and then where you want to redirect your handlebar, hold down your Option key or Alt if you have a PC at home. Drag the handle in the direction you want it to then go, and then continue your path. So I'll just work my way around here, only adding anchor points where there's a change in direction. Here where the thumb and forefinger meet, I'll hold down Option or Alt again. I'll get that Convert Point tool, and I'll hold my mouse down and drag up and to the right for the new direction, and continue my path by holding my mouse down and dragging in the direction I want the handlebars and the arcs to move. Okay. I'll just work my way around this hand. And then a nice long smooth arc where the wrist is. And it doesn't matter what the path looks like outside of your canvas. So once I'm outside or beyond the canvas, I'll just navigate back to my first point, look for that circle indicating I'm closing the path, and I'll click one time. I know the path is now closed because all of the anchor points were suddenly highlighted as solid anchors here. And I'll go back in here and I'll create a new path just for this little cutout inside of the thumb and the hand. And just to give you a little tip on creating paths around objects like this, the key is to make the path sort of inside of the object, not outside. See how my path is going outside of that thumb? If I then load this path as a mask, what's going to happen is I'm going to see a black line surrounding that thumb, sort of giving away the fact that this is cut out. So I'm just going to move my path so it's inside of the flesh colors. And of course we can go back in and make adjustments to this path once it's loaded as a vector mask. Okay. So with both of those paths created, I'm going to just take a quick glance at my paths window, which is in the same area as your layers window. The work path is what I just worked on, and I'll just name it hands 2 since I already have a hand path there. I built that just to save some people time when I teach my face-to-face classes. So I'll name this hands 2 so that it's saved. I'll navigate back to my layers menu now, and keeping that hands layer selected, I'm going to click on my add layer mask icon 2 times. Okay, what that should have done is it should have taken the hands to path that you had selected and applied it to your hands layer that you just added a layer mask to. Now that we have this mask loaded, I'm going to press A or Shift A to access my direct selection tool, and I can make any minor edits that I need to make. I love using the arrow keys on my keyboard to make minor adjustments to the location of anchor points, and I'll just smooth out some of these if they look a little bit too sharp. This looks a little sharp here for me, so I'll just redirect this. I might even add an anchor point here. You can always add an anchor point using your pen tool. I do it a lot just to add an anchor point if one of the arcs isn't quite working out. Oops, I'm so sorry. Okay, and I'll just smooth this out again because it's looking a little pointy. Okay. And that looks pretty good. If you want to keep going in, again, you can go through and make some minor adjustments to your handlebars or the location of your anchor points using that direct selection tool. Okay, and we are working with a vector mask now, so that's what the pen tool is for. All right, with the hand created, you might want to move your sky layer a little bit if it isn't quite centered inside of the hands. You can always move this, and if it's too big or too small, Command T will allow you to transform. Always press return once you're finished with your transformations to exit out of that transform box. Okay, I'm going to navigate back to my hands layer now, and I'm going to use an adjustment layer. So I'm going to navigate to my adjustments. I'm going to select a brightness contrast adjustment, which is in my first row, first icon. With my brightness contrast adjustment properties open, I'm going to make sure I'm clipping this adjustment to my hands layer, and clipping will allow you to adjust the single layer that it's clipped to. So it's adjusting based on the masks associated with the hands layer. I'm going to increase the brightness and contrast a little bit. And if I want to make a further adjustment, I could also add a hue saturation adjustment. Again, clicking on that clip icon, which is the white square with the arrow coming out. I'm going to desaturate these hands a little bit. And because these are clipped, they're applying the adjustment based on the mask for the image-based layer they're clipped to. So these adjustments are being made based on the shape of this vector mask. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to go in and fix this a little bit because it's bothering me. Okay. Alright, so that's how we're going to adjust this, and you can always go back in and make some more adjustments if you want it to be more black and white. You can desaturate using the hue saturation option. And if you want the shadows to be a little bit heavier, maybe you can increase the contrast using your brightness contrast. Okay, so that looks pretty good. The hands are holding the sky in a way. And what we're going to do now is we're going to add a little bit of an effect around our sky. So I'm going to navigate back down to my sky layer, and I'm going to use a new tool. I'm going to use one of my shape tools. Now, shape tools are a little funny. They actually create paths, and they also create their own layer. So I'm going to find my shape tool next to my my path selection and direct selection tool. It's also underneath my type tool in my double column toolbar. I'm going to use the ellipse tool here, and I'm going to create an ellipse or a circle that is just a little bit larger than the sky. Okay, just a little bit. So I'll create something like this. Remember, to make a circle, you always hold Shift. So even with this ellipse shape tool, hold Shift, and that'll give you the same height and width. Now when I build this, I can see in my properties panel that pops up here that this has a fill color. You can also see that in your control panel here. I don't actually want to fill, I want to stroke. So I'm going to click on this fill color. Oops. And I'm going to select the None option, which is a white square with a red line through it. And then I'm going to select my stroke. And I'm going to select like a light gray for my stroke color. I'm going to increase my stroke by maybe 5, maybe a little more. 5 pixels or 8 pixels is good. I'm going to increase that. Close out these properties. If I look at my layers panel, I now see that there's a new layer called Ellipse 1. My ellipse isn't quite centered around my sky, so I'm going to press V to access my Move tool and just move this around the sky. Okay. And remember, I love nudging using my up, down, left, right arrows, so I'll just nudge this a little bit. And keeping that ellipse layer selected, I'm going to go up to my filter menu and take a look at my blur gallery. Now there's a lot of different kinds of blurs you could try. I'm just going to use a Gaussian blur right now, but know that there's an entire gallery of blurs that you could experiment with. Motion can be really interesting, lens blurs, etc. I'm going to select the Gaussian blur this time. It's going to give me this warning about rasterizing or converting it to a smart object. I'll just convert it to a smart object. And it gives me this Gaussian blur settings box. As I increase or decrease, I'll see the blur change. So I'm going to lower this down to something, 16. About, for me, I like the way the 16 pixels look. Just going to make it a soft blur here. I'll say OK. And I can always go back and change the blur if I don't like it. It is visible here in my layers window attached to my ellipse layer. Okay, that's just going to give this a soft halo. And if I want the scale to be different, I'll just hit Command T, scale it up. By the way, always read those warning boxes. That one was just telling me, you know, they're going to turn off the filters while I'm scaling this. Not a problem. Press return. So you can scale that up and down so that it fits around the sky the way you like it. And you could of course add more than one halo. You're not limited to one. Okay? If for some reason your ellipse ends up in front of your hand or somewhere else, you can always rearrange layers. Remember, just drag the layer from the right side up or down, wherever you want it to be located in your layers panel. But I have my ellipse layer currently above my sky layer. Okay, now that that's done, we're going to take a look at this top layer at the top of our layers panel, the Byrds layer. I'm going to reveal that. Okay, and we can see some birds here. Now in this original layer, my birds are black. But actually, I want my birds to be white so that they stand out against the black backdrop. To invert those colors from black to white, I'm going to keep the layer selected, and then I'm going to hit Command I. Command I is the shortcut key for inverting. We've probably used that in the past. With that changed, what I'll do is I'll hit Control click to access my drop-down menu, and I'll select Blending Options. So Control click over your image thumbnail, select Blending Options, and that'll give you a layer style dialog box where I can change my blend if options. We've used this a couple of times. We're going to blend if, and we're going to shift the black point over. And this is a great example of how you can use this blend if option for a really great, beautiful mask. I'm going to split by holding down Option. I'm going to split my black point so that I get a nice, soft, faded mask. And I'll say OK, and I can now see this lovely mask. It's gotten rid of a lot of the cloudiness over here. The birds look beautiful. I'm going to keep this bird layer selected, add a layer mask here, and press B to access my paintbrush. I'll make my paintbrush really large. I'll also make my paintbrush really soft. And using a 100% opacity, I'm just going to brush over the edge of this photograph. Okay, just to give it a nice soft edge. Okay, all right. That's going to give us some nice white birds. Now for the sky that's inside of the hand, we're going to want some black birds. So we're going to use the same layer. It's already masked out. I'm going to make a copy of it. To make a copy, remember Option, click, drag, release. So I'm just holding down Option. I'll drag this up above. You won't notice much of a difference except the clouds will get a little bit brighter. And what's happening here is we have the exact same layer. So if I hit Command T for this copy, and I hold Shift and scale down, remember we always want to scale by constraining proportions, I can see that I have these white birds. I'll rotate this, kind of decide where I want these to be in relation to the hand. And you can make any number of copies of this. Press Return. And what I'll do is I'm actually going to take this bird's copy and I'm going to select the image thumbnail and hit Command I to invert the colors. Now that actually inverted the colors of our pixels, but you'll notice that the birds just turned transparent because we have a blend if option associated with the black pixels. So to take a look at that blend if, I'm going to hit Control and then click on my image thumbnail, select blending options, and at this point, instead of using the black slider, I'm going to shift my black slider back and I'm going to use my white slider. Again, Option, click, will separate this out to give you a nice soft mask. Okay, and that'll give me these nice beautiful black birds that I can use. I'll say OK. And then if I need to tidy up any edges that I'm seeing, I'll select my layer mask, use my black paintbrush, and just paint this out of view. You could do this multiple times. If I want it to look like the birds are behind the hand, I could hold down Option, click, drag, release, and place this new copy below the hand layer. Hit Command T for transforming, and you can see what's happening here. I can scale this up, scale it down. Oop, I'm sorry. Always hold Shift to constrain the proportions. And you can see what's happening here, right? You can scale this up or down, rotate it. You can even go up to your Edit menu, transform, and flip it. And you can make a nice, beautiful layer that just looks like beautiful layers of these birds that look like they're just flocking from everywhere. That's totally up to you. I'll take my brush tool and just clean up this mask just a little bit. I just selected my bird mask here. Okay, and that gives you a little bit of depth as you're working on this. Okay, all right. The next item that we're going to be adding are these lines. Now, the way you can add lines using your pen tool or paths is you might want to have like a blank layer, and using that blank layer you can kind of paint onto the layer itself. So I'm going to navigate to the top of my layers window, select that topmost layer. For me, that's Bird's copy. I'm going to add a new blank layer. Okay, so I'm going to click on the Create a New Layer icon. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Paths window and bring that forward. And I'm going to select the path called Path 1. Now I just did this to save you time, but notice that these are just straight paths. You could build that with the pen tool if you wanted to, but this is just to save time. So Path 1 is selected. I'll navigate back to my Layers panel. Layer 1 is selected. And what I'm going to do, having those both visible is I'm going to navigate back to my paths window, and I'm going to be using this stroke icon at the bottom here. Now, it's important to note the stroke icon strokes these paths with whatever your brush settings are. So if I take a look at my brush setting right now, it is set to 250 and soft. So I'm going to bring my brush setting down to something like more like 5 pixels or 4 pixels. Okay, I'm going to change my brush color to a really faded gray. You could even choose a blue if you wanted. Faded blue. Whatever color you like, but know that it's going to be using whatever these brush settings are. Okay, and you could even use brush shapes, so don't feel obliged to always use circular. There are a lot of different brushes here. You can even look at like special effects brushes and see what those do. Those can also be really interesting applied across a path. So you're free to experiment, of course. Once you select a color, you check out your brushes, you're happy with that, make sure your path is selected. We're going to go click on this add stroke icon, stroke path with brush. I'm going to do that. You'll barely see a change, but once I deselect that path, now I can see the brush has been applied to our layer 1. And I'm just going to call this paths with brush strokes. Okay, I'll just rename that paths with brush strokes. Okay, and we can do the same thing for the paths that you're seeing in the original template. Now I'm not going to make as many paths as we made there, but you can take the pen tool, and if you wanted to create a path that that goes from the hand to off the page, you can simply build it with your pen tool. And I'll just go to my paths menu to make sure I'm working on the right path. And you can even press A to access your selection tool. Option, click, drag, release, even rotate. I love rotating and scaling things. Okay. Again, I'm using my selection tool, my black selection tool. A is my shortcut key. Option, click, drag, release will give me a copy of this path. Command T will allow me to transform it. And I could just do this all day, guys. Option, click, oh, oops, I'm sorry, I didn't press return. A, option, click, drag, release. Command T to rotate. You could scale, press return. Okay, now with this work path created, I'll go back to my layers panel, and I don't want to have my straight lines and my curved lines on the same layer, so I'll simply go down to the bottom of my layers panel and add a new layer, call it curves. Keep that new layer selected, keep this work path selected. Notice it has 4 paths on it. Of course it could have more than that. If you wanted to really if you wanted to get real sneaky with it, you can take this selection tool, select all 4, option, click, drag, release, command T, and now you've doubled it. So there's a lot of things, and once we get into Illustrator, we're going to be covering all of this in much more detail. So don't feel obliged to have a million paths here. It's just a way of showing you what you could do. Okay, with the curves layer created, we're going to go to our paths menu. We're going to choose to brush these paths. If you want to brush individual paths with different colors, what you would do is select those paths, change your brush foreground colors, and then apply the stroke to it. Okay, so it's totally up to you what colors you want to use, if you want to have them all the same color, or if you want to have, 9 different colors. It's totally fine. So I'm just going to keep changing the foreground color because that's the color of my brush, and then I'll apply it. Oops, I think I missed those somehow. think I forgot to hit the color option. So I'll just keep going back and forth, selecting my foreground color because that's going to define my brush color, and then clicking on my stroke this path with brush icon. So you'll go back and forth, okay? And you can see what it just did. It just painted these pixels onto this new curves layer. And then what we can do is we can apply a filter. So if I wanted to apply a Gaussian blur or a motion blur to these, I could, to this layer. And you can kind of see what that looks like. So for a motion blur, I could apply something like this. Okay. Oops. I'm sorry. For a motion blur, I could apply something like this. I don't think it looks bad. Changing the angle, change the distance a little bit. My brush strokes were pretty small, so it's really light and subtle. Yours could be thicker and more dramatic. And if I wanted to brighten these up, maybe what I would do is Option, click, drag, release this curves layer, and you'll see that a copy of this will make it stronger, and you can even change the blending mode. Okay, so you can have multiple curves, and if I make a copy, I can apply a different kind of blur. I don't have to apply a Gaussian or a motion. It can all be different, and it can kind of build up an interesting effect by having two different blurs affecting the same type of image. So right now I have a Gaussian blur applied to the top copy, and below I have a motion blur. Again, my brush strokes are very thin, so it's a little bit harder to see, but you can kind of play with layering these things. And you can also play with adding effects. So if I wanted an outer glow, ooh, you can see that, that's a large outer glow. If you wanted an outer glow, you could do that, and that would also highlight these objects, okay? So you could do something like this, which looks really strong, but if you bring your opacity down, it can be a nice, subtle effect that really enhances the strokes. Now that I'm done with these curves layers, I'm going to select both of them. And just like I did with my birds, I'm actually going to move these layers below my hand. To select multiple layers, remember Shift click will allow you to select multiple. And I'll just move this down so that it's behind the hand. Okay? We're almost done with this image. The last thing that we're going to do is we're going to change the sky to be a little bit stronger visually. So I'm going to select this sky layer. I'm going to apply an inner glow using my effects drop-down menu, inner glow. And with my inner glow, I'm going to use a blend mode of multiply. I'm going to play with my opacity. So I'm going to make an opacity of maybe 30 or 40%. Choke is going to change how far away it looks or what size the inner glow or outer glow is. And I'll take a look at the range. Sort of like a stronger opacity, just because it allows me to make it kind of dark on the outside and kind of glow on the inside where the hand's holding those birds. So I like that effect. Okay. Alright, so make some adjustments there. Oops, I didn't mean to click on that. Make some adjustments there. I'll say OK. Oh dear, I hope I didn't mess anything up by accidentally clicking. Okay. And that looks pretty good. Remember that you can always go back in here and make changes if you're feeling like the color balance isn't quite right. I'm sorry, I think that my saturation could go a little lower for these hands and a little darker just to make it more dramatic. The last thing you can do is add text. It does not have to say digital media arts, but maybe text for an artist that you like, or your name, or something else. I'll allow you guys to just add whatever kind of text you want. Once you've completed this, save it as a JPEG. Remember, last name, first name, and then the title of the exercise. I hope you enjoyed this composition. I think it's a pretty fun one and surprisingly easy. I will be talking to you guys next week.